Good afternoon, Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, members of City Council. I am Bertha Johnson, Deputy City Manager for Operations. I am here to provide the ARPA update for August 2023. So I want to point out the team, and the reason I point out this team is because, as you notice, this is not a department. This is a team that we pulled together from our budget department, finance, our city attorney's office, as well as the city manager's office. And so this is a team we pulled together because this is a temporary program, and so we want to make sure we have all the resources. I also want to thank and recognize some of our nonprofit organizations who are still here with us today. I would ask them to just raise your hand or stand up. These folks are our partners in this program. I saw some of them earlier, like Ms. Green, who was here, who left. We want to recognize them. They've been with us all the way, and it's been a challenge, but we have worked with them and they work with us. And so we are so appreciative as to what they do for our community. So just to give a funding plan update, you all approved 34 proposals in May 2022. At 70% of the requested funding. As I mentioned earlier, because of those constraints, many of our organizations had to go back and rescope their work to make it fit within the dollars that were approved. You have approved 23 contracts, and we've executed those contracts, and $1.68 million has been spent towards those contracts. Many of those contracts have come through recently. The organizations, each contract is negotiated and the payments are part of the contract documents. And so some of those are reimbursements, some of those are some funding up front, some of those are quarterly payments. And so it looks like a small amount, but a large number of the contracts have already been approved. Also at the February 20th City Council work session, you all approved $20 million for affordable housing projects, and we also received a $10 million match from Durham County for those projects. Additional project updates as part of the budget process also, you all approved $10 million for the Fayetteville Street Corridor Plan projects. We have an internal team working on that project in addition to the American Rescue Plan Act team. You also approved a $91,000 for summer youth opportunities for our Durham youth, and you'll see pictures of those activities later in the presentation. So the total obligated amount is $48.1 million, and unobligated is $33.7 million, and we'll talk about that in the presentation as well. So just as a reminder, we continue to work with about 6 or 8 other organizations who have not, we've not negotiate the contract, finalize the contract. And just to let you know, as we rework the scope of those proposals, we continue to focus on the priorities of the community listed here. And as we continue to try to work on rescoping those that remain, we continue to focus on these priorities as well. These are also the priorities we focused on as we look at how we develop our compliance documents and our review documents, making sure that we focus on and we center that on these priorities. So here are the organizations that were approved. The agreements have been approved, listed here, and you see some of those organizations represented in the room today. So here is the actual report that we submitted to U.S. Treasury, our last report. It requires us to show the funding and the categories of the contracts that we've approved. One of the areas I want to point out here is that in the area of health and wellness, that is the area that has the least amount of funding, and we're having conversations with Durham County about how we can support that area with more funding. So we just want to share some pictures of some of the projects that are ongoing now that have been approved by you all, as well as the contracts have been negotiated. The first one is Rebuilding Together the Triangle. That's our home and neighborhood preservation initiative. That proposal was funded at $1 million. The next project is Book Harvest, City of Books project, and you can see that actual book depository there is one that was actually funded with the funding, and there will be 62 of those throughout the qualified census tract in our targeted neighborhoods. This one is Training for Success. We have obviously Coach D with us here today. That was our Education 360 summer camp for kids 6 to 11 living in the DHA Cornwallis community. And the goal was really focused on how to remove barriers to academic success for our students during the summer. This is a very successful program. We're glad we were able to implement that, right as school was ending this year. Another project for our youth is ECHO NC, Density Labs, for youth by youth. This project was for youth ages 14 to 24 who were interested in entrepreneurship and economic opportunities. And so this was really a great space, an innovative space for students to come in that age group. And it was really focused on entrepreneurship, as I said, and career skills. Those were interested in startup or the traditional workforce track. Another project, one of our first projects, the Ellerbe Creek Watershed Association. This is really focused on reducing the nutrient loading in the city's surface waters and streams. And this group also had some other partnerships with our stormwater department as well. One of our last projects funded was Bull City Express Track Club. This project really was focused on having students funding students to go to the Junior Olympics hosted in Eugene, Oregon. This was for students 7 to 18 who competed. They also had an opportunity to visit the college campus and look at opportunities for going to college there. And this was really one of our exciting projects because we were able to watch some of this online and watch the students compete. And so we were really excited about being able to see them compete and us being able to get that funding through, because it was a challenge to get each of the individual parents to sign a hardship form so that we could be able to qualify them for ARPA funding. And so it took a lot of time on this team to work with them to get all those forms in to make sure they could meet that trip. We covered their food as well as their hotel and other travel expenses. And so this is a great opportunity for students to travel out of state and also visit college campus. So Provident 1898 was one of our earlier projects. This was Black Wall Street Hub, and this was really focused around providing space for entrepreneurs to work in and the North Carolina Mutual building. And as a matter of fact, I think this is the only project we've done a site visit on. Victoria and Crystal went up and to the facility and was treated to a presentation, a tour of the building, and they said the work looks beautiful that they've done with the funding that we provided to them. So we're really excited about that project. So Knox Street Studios, again, focused on young people, entrepreneurs, the accelerator, youth science, math, engineering. I think some folks mentioned to us that they were able to participate in some of these opportunities. And so we're really grateful for that partnership as well, working with our youth. So we could go on and on. There are a lot of great projects, but we'll stop with that one. We had to make decisions about pulling out some of the pictures so the presentation would not be so long, because we're so proud of the work our partners are doing in the community and will continue to do over the next few years. So the next part of the work is, as we transition this work to budget and management services in our finance department, will really be focused on compliance. Each of our organizations have a uniquely designed contract that has specific requirements based on their risk analysis, based on their deliverables. Some are monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, desk reviews, on-site reviews, and so that's what that team will be focused on in budget and finance. We want to make sure that we are in compliance with U.S. Treasury, because the consequences of not being in compliance and contracts being deemed ineligible means that the city would have to pay these funds back. And so we're grateful again for our organizations who in some cases had to partner with other organizations to make sure they could handle the financial requirements of receiving the funding. A few more we're working with will probably also have to engage with other organizations as well. And so this is the work that the team will continue to do over the next few years. So our team is committed, as we said before, to provide guidance and support to our organizations. the countless hours they've worked on the phone, on Zoom calls, on-site visits, trying to ensure that all of our organizations receive the funding that you all awarded to them. And so some of that, comes with some challenges, but we're continuing to work through that. Some of the other organizations we're working with, the $10 million for the Fayetteville Street Corridor, that's a big project. Also, the affordable housing projects, those are big projects that will require lots of compliance reporting and lots of work from the team to ensure that those large sums of funds are spent based on the eligibility guidelines of the U.S. Treasury. So our partnerships with Durham County, you've heard me talk about the $10 million, the arts and culture, $1 million. The digital equity project is one that you all approved in the 34. It was $700,000. Durham County matched that with $700,000. We have not used that funding because we're also still in the process of trying to fill a position that's going to be responsible for this program. The health and safety area I mentioned before, one of the areas that the county wants us to work with them on providing some funding in this area. They've already committed to $250,000, and we're looking at proposals that we have already that we may be able to support in addition to the other funding that we have available. So again, that leaves $3.7 million unobligated of the ARPA funds. What we're asking you all to do is to allow us to hold off on allocating those funds until we get the actual final numbers on our affordable housing projects. Those are a priority to you all, we know, and we want to make sure we have funding. We know we have some gaps in those projects already, and so we want to be able to complete those projects that we already have, that we've already committed to. So here's a reconciliation of the funding. As you all know, we used $7.4 million almost for premium pay for our frontline employees. Administrative costs include all of this, the software, the staff that's supporting this work, the approved proposals that you all approved. And we also had three organizations to withdraw their proposal. And so that's also part of the money that's available. Our affordable housing projects here, as well as some other selected projects that I shared with you the last time we presented, the projects that will be like Solarize Durham, the tree canopy, the projects that are in general services. So, and also looking at how we can fund some additional projects with Durham County around the health and safety. And the last one here is the Fayetteville Street Corridor. We have a team working around that project. We met with Angela Lee Hayti Historic Foundation. We've also assigned Chris Dickey in the Office of Economic and Workforce Development to make sure they have a contact person who has expertise around that work. We have an internal team, Public Works, Water Management, General Services, all looking at what funding we also have pointed towards that area, so we're not duplicative and using those resources if we already have general fund or water and sewer fund or programs that will support that area as well. So we want to make sure that we use our funds internally if we have those already allocated for that area so that we can be more transformative about the work that we do in that area. So we are really excited about that project, and Ms. Lee is as well. So here's just our proposed timeline for moving forward. We've talked about this over and over again, that the funds have to be committed by December 31st, 2024, which is next December. We have some time there that all of the funds have to be expended by December 31st, 2026. So just for those who may have questions, you can always reach out to me, Andrew Holland, our Assistant Director in Victoria. So I want to announce that Victoria, who has served in an interim role and has done an amazing job as our ARPA grants manager, has accepted the position. We had a recruitment process. She has moved into that role permanently and moved down to the budget department, and we are so excited. She's been with this project for a long time, and we're really excited for her to take this role. She was an administrative coordinator doing that work, as well as stepped into the interim role, and this role has done both over the last 6 months. And so we're giving her some relief. She can move totally to be focused on the ARPA program. So just want to make that announcement and thank Victoria for taking on that role. And the other team members are here as well if you have questions.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager, for a great report and a great team. And I will open it up for questions from our colleagues. I start to my left again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for this report. It's really great to see that these funds are already going out into the community and doing good work. I had a brief conversation with the city manager recently about just the timeline for spending out these funds. And when we first got them, it felt like it was a really long time. And now it feels like that December 2024 date is creeping closer and closer. I'm sure you are thinking about backup plans for if, groups that we have on tap already can't accept the money or don't accept the money. Could you share just a little bit about, what are we going to do to make sure that we don't have to give any of this money back to the federal government?
Yes. So a couple of things. One, we have rescoped some of these based on challenges that the organizations were facing in terms of getting to a scope that they could spend the money by the timeline. Two, we have a couple organizations that we don't believe that we're going to be able to negotiate a contract with, and we would come back and look at how we reallocate those funds. We are meeting with those organizations. When we see an organization, there's no activity, they haven't sent us an invoice, we are meeting with them to say, hey, what's going on? That was one of the reasons that Victoria and her team visited Providence 1869. The work is done, but they had not sent us an invoice. And so they wanted to make sure that we were pleased with the work that had been done before they submitted their invoices. And so they went up and saw the property and said, this is great, it's within the scope. So just reaching out to the organizations, making sure that there's nothing we can do to help them move forward. Again, there are going to be some that are going to be a challenge for us to, the last standing, I think it's about 6 or 8 that we're working with, that we may have to, at some point, it might be us who makes the call with that organization versus them withdrawing. But we are monitoring to them on a regular basis. Many of them, the contracts came through really late, and so you don't see a lot of activity on the invoices, but the invoices that will come will be large invoices. And they have, I think, about 15 that they're working on providing funding to that have now submitted reports. Some of the challenges, when we receive an invoice, we also need to have their report to make sure that they have submitted their report and we have that on file before we give them additional funding. And some of that takes going back and forth and going through and reviewing the report. It's in compliance. We need more detailed receipts. We need more information. So they have about 15 they're working on now, and hopefully, that batch will go through fairly quickly, and we'll see a big expenditure. But that's a great question. I mean, we're focused on that as well. One of the reasons we're partnering with Durham County, there's some things we can do, obviously, that we're already working on, like affordable housing, the digital inclusion, and then us with them on the health and safety category.
Great, thank you. Yeah, this is a lot of really great work, and we want to make sure that we can do as much of it as possible with this funding. Really appreciate the update and all the work that y'all are doing to make this happen. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Johnson. We'll turn now to my right, see if there are any questions on this end.
Thank you. I would also concur with Councilmember Johnson on how phenomenal it is to see everything moving. And I want to say there are a lot of nuances to the way that this all works, and I would love to hear if there's a plan around supporting with more technical assistance. I know that Victoria is one person, and that's a lot to ask of one person. And I know just in the basis of a couple of different projects that have come across my email, there's a lot of layers to this. And so I'm hopeful that you're asking for the support that you need, Victoria and Bertha.
Yes, we do. And technical assistance, it depends on what the issue is. We have folks in finance if it's a question about the budget, about the reporting. If it's something about the scope, Victoria, we also have Carlos in the city attorney's office who spends a great deal of time with us as well as our organizations if there's a question around the contract, documents. So there are different folks working on different components. We have Andrew and Christina also as the support for the budget. So it depends on what the issue is or concern or whatever the organization needs from us is how we use our resources.
And I guess to that point, who's doing that organizational resource assessment? Is that all Victoria?
I'm sorry, Wes.
So in trying to figure out exactly what the organization might need as support.
So we have American Rescue Plan Act email address, and all of our correspondence with our organizations come to that address, which goes to all of us. And so if it's a finance question, finance responds. We have Tim and
The other
Shayla,
way.
3 folks in finance. So
I got what you're saying, yes. If they know to ask the question coming in, yes. But if they don't know to ask the question or have a resource to set up conflict of whatever it was, statement for their organization, that's mandatory. Like, is there a resource for the organizations externally?
So first of all of our organizations, when we start working with this, and I'm not sure if this answers your question, we meet with them as a team and we go over all the documents that are required. And we make sure they understand the documents. If they have questions, we say, contact us when you start going through the documents, and we'll reach back out to you. If it's something we can help with, we help with. We've helped get them get their federal numbers, as well as filling out their budget documents, as well as helping with their risk assessment, like all of their documents. So we go through those documents with them as part of the initial meeting, and then they follow up with us if they have questions about those documents. Any other questions they have, they reach out, they send it to the ARPA email address, because we tell them in there, send it to this email address so that everyone will get the email, so we will make sure we get the right resource to you.
Okay.
So that's part of the, as I was talking to Ms. Lee today, I said to her, I didn't want to send you the documents until we had the meeting, and we would go over the documents with you to make sure you understand the documents, and if you have questions, you know who to contact. And most of it has been around the risk assessment, as well as some of the policies that they're required to have, and sometimes it's 2 or 3 in-person meetings for us to them bring us a bunch of documents and say, help me look through these and tell me what you need to complete this form. So we're open to working with organizations as many times as it takes, because our goal is to make sure every organization on the list, all 34, if they do not withdraw their proposal, are funded.
So what you're saying is you are providing the technical assistance?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if you recall when we were at the league conference, you know, one of the comments came up with organizations. One of the reasons they did not go this route with organizations because they knew how much work it would be to do that technical assistance. But we also heard from organizations who said, now that I have this strong foundation, I have all of these documents, I'm able to get this federal money, now I can apply for other federal money that I would not have been able to apply for because I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal. I will just add that it would probably be, there's a lot to build into that, but I don't want ARPA to kind of be the only. What I'm concerned with is that this is a great opportunity to help build a lot of community-based organizations that are in need of the technical support that the city is now providing. What does that look like going forward after ARPA? And then also, what does it look like to have a program repeat itself or repeat some way, shape, or form funding that could be provided, whether it's from the city or other organizations? Like all of those pieces as we're moving through this process, like, yes, COVID happened, we had this opportunity, the almost 50 million, available. Next year looks different. What are we doing now to kind of build it into our community resources so that it doesn't just drop and go away?
That's a good point.
Because what you're saying is that we're providing all of that support, and that's not sustainable. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And certainly we are listening to all of the feedback that is here. I did want to bring one point up. Our neighborhood improvement services kind of has a supportive role in helping our nonprofits build capacity just in general. There's a whole curriculum that is put together for nonprofits, particularly smaller nonprofits, to build capacity within themselves. And I think there's even an ARPA project that helps somewhere $300 and something thousand that is helping them to build those programs and continuously cycle through nonprofits to to help them be better prepared to respond to requests for proposals, whether they're from the county or from the city. We certainly realize, just as important as it is for us to build capacity in businesses, it is important for us to build capacity in nonprofit partners that help us deliver critical services to residents. As it relates to the grants that we are actually delivering to the community through the ARPA or federal treasury funding, I mean, that is something that is a one-time, it's $50 million. It can be duplicated, but it has to be money coming from somewhere for the actual grants themselves. But I do feel that we are doing sort of a 360 degree opportunity for helping build capacity. And we're hopeful that funding will come to this community based on some of that capacity.
I would just say that I think that we're going to need to do a little more to figure out the ongoing side of this, because the capacity piece is not limited to the 34. And we know that. And so if the curriculum is available, it'd be nice if it's available online or in some way, shape, or form, making it massively available, because there's a lot more than 34 organizations, that's all. And I appreciate that the 300,000 is in place, and whatever that looks like, and trying to make sure that it's replicatable or virtual so that it is recorded is helpful. And so even the documents, whether they're like as a manual just available to any organization that reaches out, whether it's the ARPA email address or a 360-degree email address, like making sure that that's tied together so that we're not missing the mark and trying to support. I mean, once we've developed it, so why not use it? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments, colleagues? Come here.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for all the hard work of this team. I know that the rules have changed also along the way from the federal government, and so that makes it even more complex. And I appreciate the reminder of we have to get it right or we owe the money back. And I certainly don't want to pay any money back. I want to make sure we spend all of it, and I also don't want to pay any back. So I appreciate the details that you all are, or the detailed way you're doing this, because it's a lot. And I know that we asked that from y'all because of the way we did our community response to COVID. So thank you, because you all met a challenge, and you're doing an excellent job, and I'm excited to continuously get some updates about the great work, and know that you all will help us make great decisions for anything that is left over.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, DCM Johnson, and your team. It's really difficult to overstate how much work has gone into this. Each one of those contracts in and of itself is a project. With federal money, you can't just make it rain willy-nilly. You got to follow all kinds of rules and dot I's and cross T's. So I just want to commend your team on, and I want residents and citizens to know the monstrous amount of work it is to spend this amount of money. I don't know if any of us will be alive to see this type of windfall from the federal government. And there's nothing redemptive about COVID. There's nothing good about slavery. But all this money that has come, I don't know if we'll ever see this again, at least in our lifetimes in the country. So this is really a watershed, unprecedented moment. I just want to real quick just acknowledge the community stakeholders and those of you that actually do the work that are here in the chamber, and thank you for being with us. You are the tip of the spear. You are the folk who do the work and don't often get the headlines or your names called, but I call you headline stoppers. We see a lot of headlines about things that are bad that happen in our community, but there are people working every day that prevent headlines. There are headlines we will never hear about because of the type of work that you folk do. So I want to congratulate you. I hope that this money puts you in a position to increase your visibility, to not only increase your capacity, but to draw success, that it will make you so visible that, as Councilmember Freeman said, the opportunity to make sure your work is sustained and increased because of your success with this money, it'll put you in a better position to draw those funds, whether it's municipal or philanthropic or otherwise. So that's my hope. Finally, I want to say also to you, DCM Johnson, to your team, that I want to be available, particularly on this $10 million for the Fayetteville Street corridor. What a historic opportunity is before us to turn that corridor, alas, into what it should be, a destination for people all around this country, as they're making lists of where they want to make pilgrimage, the important places they want to see, Sweet Auburn, Atlanta, Sugar Hill, New York. It should be they're coming to see the Fayetteville Street corridor, the Hayti community. And that's not just about black folk, that's about Durham's entire tourism profile. It's going to be good for the city. So I want to make myself available. There are a lot of stakeholders in that corridor, and I know the work to determine exactly how we spend that money. And $10 million is just a drop in the bucket for what they've taken from us and historically what's happened in that community. But finally, there's real money on the table from an American municipality to address that historic disinvestment. And I hope we'll take just a few seconds to feel the weight of it and then get off of that and get to work and roll up our sleeves to actually do the work. So I want to make myself available, particularly when it comes to engaging stakeholders in that, the many diverse stakeholders along that corridor and spending this $10 million. And alas, trying to address some of the historic injustices that have occurred in that area. So exciting time. Thank you so much for the work. And I know as an entire council, look forward to continue to support you and find creative ways to spend what's left. But I heard what you said about holding it for affordable housing projects. So we'll go forward in good faith with that. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you again for those of you that do the work. The city appreciates you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate it.